I'm just delighted this afternoon, by the way, I'm Scott Hudson, chair of the department, delighted to have two of our own PhD students here in the department doing today's brown bag. We'll first have a presentation from Alisha Borck and then Anna Hutterli. And the background here is that they both received a little bit of funding from the department to do summer research. And so we're delighted to have them come kind of share with us what they've been up to. So this is pretty informal. Don't expect, final results. This is definitely a work in progress, like many of these informal brown bags. And so I think I'll just stop talking and let Alisha come up and give her presentation. It's entitled Crisis in Community Care, Studying Hunger at Home as a First Generation Student.
Okay, so first I would like to point out what this is a photograph of, for those of you who may not know. So I study food pantries or charitable feeding programs in Appalachian Eastern Kentucky. And this was an event, you might be able to tell, but this is Andy Bashir, right there actually. This was an event. We had a selfie, it's on Facebook, check it out. This was an event in which we were coming together to celebrate the reception of $1.2 million for a food pantry in my hometown. And part of that, as is part of many charitable feeding programs, an event is prayer. So this is a group of people that were all together, along with, we have the governor, the mayor was there, some people, or one person that's running for governor was there, and several other political leaders and pastors and people that have spent some time volunteering at the local food pantry. And they were praying for them as community stewards as they lead hunger efforts and fighting hunger in my hometown. First, some acknowledgments. This research was, as Scott said, funded by the Dissertation Research Enhancement Award and several UKY awards, CESJ Fellowship, and has even, we all know that Amber Wooditch was recently claimed a MacArthur Genius. It's also been hopefully sprinkled with her magic through the NSF training camp with her and Russ Bernard. And that was it's wonderfully helpful and is not part of this though, because what I'm going to present on today is a recent publication with Home Field. This is something that I wrote for them that's kind of like an informal online space to talk about your research here in North America. And this is in the Communities in Crisis series, so that sort of is why the word crisis is within this presentation. It was written for that series. Research design, so I've spent, at this point, a little over a year now doing ethnographic research in my hometown. That includes participant observation and semi-structured interviews. It's a quota sample across different constituent groups. So basically I'm talking with people in Washington, D.C. at the federal level. I'm talking with clients of the food pantry at their kitchen tables. I'm talking with food pantry staff and directors, food bank directors and CEOs, as well as political leaders. And this is not a study that I went to the field to study down. This is not, I didn't have to learn a second language to do this work. I had to fall back on my native language and the thick Appalachian accent of calling window winder, and having a hard time transcribing that because the accents are very much like my mother's. That also means that sometimes my participants are my family members because I am studying home in more ways than one. I'm studying home because this is the geographic space where I'm from, but I'm also studying home because this is a topic that I have lived through most of my life, actually. I visit food pantries that used to feed me and still feed my parents. I visit food pantries where I see my aunt and uncle get turned away. So while my participants are knowledgeable experts over food insecurity, they're also sometimes just my mom. I'm in the process of data analysis, comparative thematic, whatever. I'll get back to you in a few months on that. Another important tool that I use to conduct this research is storytelling. So when you are not studying down and you're just studying horizontally, that really opens a space for critical dialogue to share your own story of hunger. Hunger is a highly stigmatized topic, and that means that people are reluctant to share their stories. So I started sharing my story of hunger in 2017 with local soup kitchens, and it has eventually led to Washington, D.C. to meet with federal staffers, the Feeding Kentucky group and the Food and Research Action Center, and Feeding America at large. The Hunger Rally here at the state, that was where I took my first selfie with Governor Beshear. There's more than one. And then again, that's just in DC. So this research is informed by humans just sharing the hardships of being hungry. And sometimes that is the care. So to break down how this whole system works, we have Feeding America at the top. So when you see your local food pantry in operation, the space where people go to get food, that's part of a huge system that's informed by the Farm Bill and TFAP and commodity agriculture. But it really starts with Feeding America. This is the federal partner, as they like to say. This is where the decisions are made. This is where we're praising Amazon. When I walked into the Federal Feeding America conference, the first thing that you saw was like, all hail Amazon and Walmart. Thank you for donating food, even though they're like paying their employees poverty wages. And then that goes down into the state partners, state agencies, in which would be like Feeding Kentucky, our state umbrella, I guess. Not all states are connected to Feeding America, but Kentucky is, as of in the last 10 years. That goes down into the food bank. So food pantry and food bank are often used interchangeably. They're different things. Food banks are a warehouse that distribute food to food pantries and soup kitchens and backpack programs. You do not get food in any of these levels until here. This is where the people are at throughout the research. Although I have done interviews at all levels. I guess it's deciding to not work. What's happening? Okay. So charitable food relief. This is often referred to in the literature as emergency food. It's not emergency food though. It's really not. It's actually just groceries for a lot of people. Although COVID was a unique time in which some people who had never experienced hunger before were in line at the pantry for the first time, COVID didn't invent hunger, and in some cases, the people who run the pantries believed that COVID didn't even exacerbate it. Sure, it led people that had never been there to visit, but it just basically pulled a crisis that many people have experienced for a long time off of the back shelf and into national headlines. So not emergency food. For some people during COVID who had never experienced hunger and were in line at the pantries to get food, it was emergency and supplemental food. For others, it's just their grocery bill, or their groceries. They say that this is supplemental emergency food on the Feeding America website, although they also, a few lines below, boast about servings over 6.6 billion meals through the last year. So, the everyday life of crisis when you're at home in the field. This was really difficult for me to write because it meant that I had to go back through my field notes over the last year. And when you don't have to read this whole thing, but when you are a person studying something that you also experience, it means that your field notes and your personal diary, that line becomes way more obscure than you thought that it would. It means that when you're hearing about the crisis of, oh, I can't afford car insurance this month, so that means I'm not going to pay it. And then that means that I am going to get pulled over, and then maybe I'm not going to be able to use my car, and then there are so many different rules and regulations that even prohibit some people from driving to work. Simple as that. You can't afford a driver's license, you can't afford car insurance. If you don't already have a car, how are you going to get a car unless you can save up enough for it? How are you going to save up enough for it when you're not making enough to even feed yourself? This is the everyday life of crisis that not only I've experienced personally, but I found that my clients, or that my participants, and sometimes my family, who were also my participants, experienced a lot as well. The everyday life of crisis, as I wrote about in Home Field, often has a few different commonalities. The first is that there's like a temporal component. So I often hear people say, I'm just having a hard time right now, as they are having to wean their 4-month-old baby because they can't afford formula feeding. We're just having a hard time right now. So then when I press them to think about a time when it wasn't hard right now, they can't. But there's a temporal component usually added because I guess it makes it more digestible. A lot of my participants were unsheltered people that had moved from place to place because their encampments were strategically torn down by the government every time they would build up. One person, I left the field on a really hot summer day in particular. We went to Dairy Queen and got food. And one person cried after I hugged them because she didn't remember the last time a human hugged her. And they consistently talked about feeling subhuman. And it just made me think about how this is so much more than food. What a crisis this is when someone has to thank you for hugging them because they don't remember the last time they had human contact. It also means that you have to take your kid to the pantry with you, if you get food that time. We'll get to that in a minute. And the kids are digging through the boxes before you can even make it home because they haven't eaten all day and they're hungry. So the little food that you do get is often gone by the time you even make it to the house. So what happens at the pantry is typically, if you have not been in the last 31 days, there are various checks to make sure that you qualify. Even though this is charitable food, it definitely mirrors the state. It reminded me of going to sign up for food stamps or SNAP benefits with my mom as a kid, getting charitable food. But also often what happens, and what I hear a lot from my friends that are food pantry directors, is that handing out food actually comes second in their mission to help the community. The first thing that they would like to do is feed them spiritual bread and feed them enough spiritual bread that they move on to live a righteous life and go to heaven. And that's the first and foremost important thing to them, and that's their way of caring about the community, is making sure that everyone lives right and earns a spot in heaven. And so when I asked about, well, you know, what about people that are hungry? They, one person in particular gave me a really powerful analogy, and they said, I like to give them spiritual bread as well. I'll hand out Bibles and pray for people, even if I was taking home food that was given to me that day because there were surplus Starbucks Frappuccinos, because, you know, value, commodities. Starbucks Frappuccinos donated by Walmart sometimes don't make it to the clients. The angel hair pasta always does, don't worry. But the Starbucks Frappuccinos do not, neither do the Girl Scout cookies. So those are often hoarded back, and they were offered to me. So while people are denied, even though there is food inside, they're denied for, you've been here within the last 31 days, you don't have your ID, you don't have a car, how are we going to send this home with you? For other reasons, they at least get spiritual bread. And as one of my friends said, don't worry, we'll pray for you, even if you're gay. So this is actually a title that I'm working on for my dissertation. I thought about pray now, eat later. It made sense in my head. So this religious labor of care that is happening to people who are experiencing a crisis is also happening in tandem with a very structured business model. So corporate America is alive and well inside charitable feeding programs. What we're finding is that there was one food pantry day that was really slow. There weren't many people in line, and I was like, whew, at least I don't have to see where my friends from high school coming through. This puts me in such a weird identity crisis, you don't even know. And one of the people said, someone needs to go outside and wave a sign like the Little Caesars guy. We need to bring more people in here. One day, on a line that was 2.5 hours of wait, now keep in mind, 2.5 hours when you have some money and you have a 2018 Toyota Prius with a full tank of gas and an air conditioner, maybe not that big of a deal. But a 2-hour wait when you're in like a 1989 Toyota Tercel with less than a fourth of gas and a radiator that's leaking some things, no AC, and it's over 100 degrees outside, and you have 2 kids in the back seat, totally different. So, 2-hour wait, and the typical clientele of the pantry, by the way, does not have that Prius. They have the Tercel. 2-hour wait. I watched a family in that time get turned away because it was senior day. So, can't eat today because come back tomorrow or next week. It's senior day, so keep on moving. And the food pantry director comes outside and says, oh, we're doing so well. Had that been a business, like, I don't know, Little Caesars, where they have the signs, I would be like, yeah, like, what's the profit? This is a charitable food pantry. And this is not a unique sentiment. I've studied more than one pantry in my hometown, and they compete with each other. Oh, they have this, we don't have that. How did they get that? We need that over here. Oh, they're doing this, we would never do that. You should come to ours instead. The line is so good today. People love us. Keep in mind, they're coming there to get food because they're hungry. Oh, and whenever another person said that they wanted to start helping people eat, one person said, why would you do that? Why would you want to start your own pantry? Just come here. And beyond that, the food itself travels through different levels of care. So here, this is some watermelon slices. This was for a single mom. She was, I think, 19. She had 2 kids. She also was one of, this is actually a really common thing, she was also one of the people that had to wean her infant very early because she couldn't afford formula. And when I opened this, which she had collected the day before I got there, the smell of alcohol, as she said would, just hit you in the face. This is watermelon. These bananas were also collected the day before I visited her. They weren't there for a week. I met her at the pantry, and then the next day, this is what the food she had looked like. This is what's donated to people at the pantry. This is what you're waiting in line for 2.5 hours to potentially get if you qualify. Meanwhile, at the event where we were celebrating with Andy Bashir, this was the food that was donated to the people who are volunteering at the pantry. Now, no one who was hungry was at that event. This was all donors and pastors and political leaders. This was what was donated. This is a ton of food that's being thrown away at the Feeding America conference. At the Feeding America conference. Everyone's there, and we're passionate about advocating for hunger and justice now. As we have signs that say, Walmart, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, the poverty wages, scratch that. We'll forget that. Thank you for your generosity. With that generosity, we're going to throw it in the trash. And when it makes it to the trash in my hometown, if you've read Food Not Bombed, you might be hopeful and think, oh, people could go to the trash can and eat it, right? They could just lean it. And no, they're actually pouring acids all over the food in the trash can, so unsheltered people can't go clean that. They're also poking holes in the trash bags so that raccoons get to them before they can. And if it's clothing, don't worry, JCPenney will cut it up. So this policing care and charity is dangerous, but not surprising, unfortunately. So the food pantries have things like a drive-through, a barcode scanner, a wait time, a desired wait time, so they can police who's coming in. So one of the pantries recently adopted an ID requirement. Guess what that means if you're not documented? Where would you normally go to get food help if you weren't documented? Places like this, right? Well, now they're requiring driver's licenses to get food. You have 31 days, and food pantries often said, this is a requirement for Feeding America, this is a requirement from the food bank. However, I talked with those people and that wasn't a requirement. Food pantries actually have the decisions to make those on their own. Some things do require a 31-day check that are funded through like TFAP and like it's mostly senior commodities, but most things don't. And 31 days. One food pantry has a waiver that new clients sign that says that you will not share food that you got from here. Needless to say, there is an insurance that protects them if the clients get sick from food. They're totally fine, but you're not allowed to share. Or if you have people living with you, which happens a lot, and you're on Section 8 housing, HUD, and you're caught, you're out. So while people helping people seems to be the most effective form of aid, it's policed. The food pantries that I met with were often using a system called Charity Tracker. There's more than Charity Tracker though, there are so many different things. It's a system where you put in all of the client's information, how much they make, because they need to know how much you make, how many people are in your household, your driver's license number, and other things to make sure that you're not cheating the system. And when I looked at the reviews of Charity Tracker, because I'm like, someone's got to be talking about how this is messed up. Like, why are we doing this? This is charitable food. What? The reviews online were, it helps us to prevent people from abusing the system. It helps us make sure we're not enabling them. We don't want to enable people. And it helps us make sure that they're not going to different places. Because why would you do that? Why would you wait in the line for 2 hours unless you were hungry, right? And it's helping people to change their lives and break models of generational poverty, you know, by starving them to death. So the call to action, I don't have anything hopeful to say at the end of this. I wish I did, but I don't. I'll let you know after transcriptions and analysis if I do. But currently I do not. So what we hear often though is that for every $1 you give to the food bank or the food pantry, that's $7! Yay! We can buy so much more food than you can because we get it at a cheaper price. Who's getting it? Are they gonna get denied? Where's that money going? Is it actually feeding people? So my call to action at this point is if you want to help hungry people, go feed a hungry person at this point. Cut out the middle things. I know that's not eloquent. I know that's not probably what we want to do because that would mean that we have to go talk to people, and who wants to do that? That's strange, I know. Help your community, support your community, and study the Farm Bill, especially this year. Learn what TFAP is and learn why we should not be using commodity agriculture that's built on like surplus farming in 2023. And that is it.
Have a couple of questions before we start the second presentation.
I don't have a question so much as, and I know you're like data analysis and everything. I'm just really profoundly struck, even though this is a very familiar story to me from my own research, of the intertwining of suspicion and policing and mistrust of people who are victims of systemic abuse on the one hand, and care on the other. And I don't know, I was just struck by that. So I don't know if you're looking into any of the ethnographic stuff on suspicion or things like that. But.
Yeah, so I think that what's been helpful for me is we had distinguished lecture Kiara Bridges on like policing poverty. Like her work is really important to this. And I mean, it's, yeah, that is something that I am going to publish next, is this like, how do we like police poverty and like disguise that as care? Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was a very powerful presentation. Overall and all. So when you go in Washington, how do people justify this policing? Do they just kind of, sweep it under the rug?
They couldn't even justify my presence in the room. So I was brought to Washington, D.C. By Feed in Kentucky. Actually, they paid for everything. They put me in the nicest hotel I've ever been in. They gave me like over $200 a day to eat. It was very fancy. For like, whatever. And in DC, when we're meeting with political staffers, they often would like say, oh, so you're like a SNAP success story. And I'm like, right. The fact that I had nothing to eat as a kid and they ate popcorn for 2 days straight. Success, yes. I don't know. Talk to my endocrinologist about that. We'll see. Success. But they, I guess what I do want to say, and it's not sophisticated, is that people in Washington, D.C. are actually more under-informed than you might think about what's happening. And there's this like consistent, like, oh, well, look, they know about this. But then when you talk to them, they don't know about that either. And so when I met with staffers in Mitch McConnell's office, one of them literally didn't understand how the Farm Bill worked. So that's but there is a UK coaster in his office, so that gives us hope.
We'll take one more question.
What are your thoughts about like this idea of like mobilizing pity? Because obviously with particular issues such as this, there's this very high like, oh, come see these people, come take care of these people, and of course like in your conversation here, you mentioned like Amazon, Walmart for worship. It's really hard to criticize organizations who do work. Like what are your thoughts about that? Like, sense of like pitying people who use these services, and then some of the how do they feel about like some of these messages?
I could only speak to like that within the regional context of Appalachia, which like is often like marked by these like notions of like resilience, which then like totally slash social safety benefits because it's like, oh, they're so resilient, they'll take care of themselves. But in this research, I honestly found that what's feeding people is actually the hungry people. Like hungry people feed hungry people, and so for that, I mean, like what's pity gonna do, right? Like they're like their best shot is helping each other, and like to the point where like different households like know different like food stamp schedules because they have this like really operational system of barter and trade that works. Sometimes it falls flat, but people helping people, and sometimes the primary driver of that is religion, and sometimes it's just because you understand what hunger is like, but pity is.
I'm so sorry to cut in, but I want to make sure that Anna has some time for her presentation. So, because we're already about halfway through our hour. Thank you so much, Alisha. So, let's see. Is yours on a USB? Okay. All right, so I'll just read the title. The Byzantine Stress, or My Bioarchaeological Adventure in Burdur, Turkey. Thank you so much, Anna. Take it away.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to give you all a warning. This presentation discusses topics of disease and skeletal pathology and will feature a few images of human bones. I aim to make them as respectful as I can. But if these topics are not something that you want to hear or see, that is okay. I will not be offended. Totally understand. Also, for this reason, this presentation is not recorded, so on YouTube you only see my face. So the main focus of my dissertation is urbanization, which is a pivotal issue in the modern world for which we can gain insight from the past. And in the ancient Mediterranean world, urbanization has been studied from all different aspects, bioarchaeological included. However, the eastern Mediterranean, especially ancient Turkey, are significantly less explored than in these topics are significantly less explored than in the western Mediterranean world. And so the goals for my dissertation research, simplified, is to compare levels of stress-related pathology between urban and rural Byzantine individuals. My urban sample is the late Roman, early Byzantine site of Philadelphia, and the rural sample is Byzantine Samantash. And Samantash is the one that we will be talking today, because this is where I started my research. So here are my research questions. So I aim to answer how does living in an urban environment affect the diet and health of people compared to a rural environment? Are there differences in nutrition, stress, and nutritional and metabolic pathologies between sex, age, and status groups? Did urban or rural living affect gender, age, and economic inequality regarding access to food resources? And how did the intersections of these elements of identity affect the diet and health experiences in Byzantine individuals? So, generously sponsored by our anthropology department, I spent 7 weeks in Burdur, Turkey, from May 11th to July 1st. It's a little town over here, and you can kind of orient yourself on the map. Antalya is here, Izmir there, Istanbul at the top. Okay, specifically, I spent most of my time in that building at the top picture at the Mehmet Akif Ersoy University, where the anthropology lives on the first and the basement floors, mostly for temperature and preservation. And the lower picture is the view that you can get from that building of the campus. So, a little bit about my methods. Of course, the first goal was to fill out a skeletal inventory to see what bones are present for an individual and what are missing. Then to do age estimation, sex estimation, and pathology estimation. And all of my methods started from the cranium. The Philadelphia sample is expected to be very commingled, and the cranium, especially a complete cranium, is a part of the body that I expect to be less susceptible to commingling. So to unify methods, I started from the cranium everywhere. So age estimation, I looked first at the cranial sutures, right, and estimating age from their fusion. Then if the cranium was broken or the sutures were damaged taphonomically, then I would look at the pubic symphysis or the auricular surface of the pelvis to supplement the age estimation. And then also looking at the late fusing epiphyses such as the sternal end of the clavicle, as you see the big green arrow over there, and the first and second sacral vertebrae with the dotted line on the sacrum. Next, sex estimation followed the standard methods described by Baxter and Locker. Again, starting with the cranium, I looked at the 5 features on the cranium that you can see here that are used for sex estimation. If not enough of these traits were present, then I also supplemented sex estimation with the pelvic traits that are also helpful in this process. And then, so I would, again, use the standard methodology, assign scores to all of these features from 1 to 5, 1 being the most female, and 5 being the most male. And then find the average and assign the final score for it myself, for an individual, doing the final sex estimation. I also use this program called MorphoPass, and this is what the interface looks like. you put in your scores for all the different traits that you scored. So here you can actually see the data for one of the individuals that I actually collected. On the very left, I would also put historic period, since Byzantine period is a historic one. And then the program would give me this result. So the case prediction, which you can translate into this individual has an 82.2% probability of being male and 17.8% probability of being female. So that I summarized as probably male. If data would say, for example, 90-something% male, I would score it as finally like male without the probably. And next followed the pathology estimation. These are the 4 pathologies that I looked at: parodic hyperostosis, criborobitalia, porosity of the pterygoid fossa of this sphenoid, and linear enamel hypoplasia. So, starting with parodic hyperostosis, it is the porosity of the cranial vault, specifically the parietal and the occipital bone. And the top line of the pictures, you can see, is the severity scoring method that I used. Parodic hyperostosis is connected with anemia or iron deficiency, so it tells us about that. So here is one of the examples from Samantash. This is not the most severe case of parodic hyperostosis, but you can see over here slight pitting and thickening of the bone. So on this chart, that would be a 2, right? Then, criborobitalia is the porosity of the orbital roof. It tells us about either iron deficiency or scurvy vitamin C deficiency. And the lower row of the images is the scoring scale. Here is, again, one of the examples from Samantash. This case is a little bit of a more severe criborobitalia. Then, porosity of the pterygoid fossa is actually something that contributes to the estimation of criborobitalia, helping us diversify between anemia or scurvy. So the sphenoid is this butterfly-shaped bone that is located behind your eyeballs, and it has these pterygoid plates that have kind of like little caves in them, the pterygoid fossa. And when an individual has vitamin C deficiency, these pterygoid fossa tend to become pitted, also have the porosity. So, and this is one of the examples from Snoddy and colleagues pointing out this porosity. And here is one of the examples from Samantash. So also the pterygoid processes where they are usually very fragile and very tiny. So one of the kind of challenges on this process was to ensure that, to find them among the bones if they were out of order, and preserving making sure that they are intact after cleaning. And finally, linear enamel hypoplasia. It's lines or grooves on teeth that occur due to stress during autotomy, acute stress. So in childhood, when the teeth are forming, the enamel of the teeth is forming, acute stress can cause the formation of the enamel to get disrupted, creating these lines on teeth. It is a little bit paler than I have on my screen, but hopefully you can see these orange lines on teeth. And on this data, you can actually see a groove. So sometimes it's not just the visual representation, it's the also palpable, like you can feel it. So, these are the pathologies that I collected data on. So, my collected data includes 67 individuals 22 of whom were male or probably male, 55 of whom were female or probably female. I also documented 9 cases of parodic hyperostosis, although that does seem very low to me, and I will have to check myself on that. 38 cases of criborobitalia, and 24 individuals having both criborobitalia and porosity of the pterygoid fossa. And then linear enamel hypoplasia was the most prevalent, present in 44 individuals. So, for my future plans, I will need to return to Burdur to finish the Samantaj data collection. I've actually looked through an entirety of the Samantaj collections and found 22 individuals who are adults and have identifiable sex that I still need to work with. Then, next up is to collect data from the Philadelphia sample, so approximately 100 individuals, maybe more, we'll see. And collect samples for stabilized isotope analysis to also add the diet reconstruction, right? Not to only see just the pathologies, but also see how the diet may have also been connected with that. And for that, I will need to collect small 2-gram samples of ribs. Ribs tend to be the most broken part of the skeleton. So taking the 2 gram of a rib fragment is very minimally destructive to the individual. Okay, and as a palate cleanser from the disease and pathologies, Turkey is a heaven for cats. And I wanted to also show you the pictures of the cats that I became friends with. There you go. Bowie and Maggie are cats of my friend Mood. And the attic kitten is actually the kitten I found in the attic of the building I lived in. And I lost my mind over him for like 2 weeks. I fed him and eventually he got strong and brave and ran away. So yeah, this is it for my presentation. Thank you so much. If you have any Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. That was really clear. What is this collection from? I understand that it's at this university, but where were these? How are they being kept? What is the origin of the collection and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. They are locally excavated collections. Specifically, Samantaj was discovered when a mining company wanted to clear up space for their mining activities. So they actually sponsored the whole excavation and did it very pristine. So now the university that is closest to it, McHugh, Mehmet Akif Ersoy University, is in charge of preserving them. Philadelphia is also an ongoing excavation. So they're all located nearby Burdur. Yes?
Yeah, that was really great. So you have one site that's late Roman and early Byzantine, and one Byzantine site.
Yeah.
So in addition to the rural-urban divide, how are you controlling for the chronological difference, or do they overlap substantially so that they're even?
Yeah, that's a great question. They do have an overlap. So it is a little bit difficult to say because Philadelphia doesn't have specifically like dates established like with the analysis, dating analysis. So, but we know that Philadelphia has been a big city since the Roman era, and so what I know is that the excavated individuals there date approximately from the late Roman to early Byzantine, which is also a good thing because the urbanization went on a very significant decline in the Byzantine time period. So that actually gives us a more distinct difference between urban and rural. For Samantash, there are specifically found out dates, and it dates between 7th and 12th century CE. Yes?
Yeah, when you talk about your doing the diet reconstruction, are you going to do any comparison of the historical anecdotal evidence that says, here's what we think they're eating at this time with what you're finding on the diet reconstruction?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there are historical accounts of what people were eating, where we kind of, I myself do have some knowledge on what Romans were eating, especially in the late Roman period, especially with my master's thesis all based on the diet. But yes, of course, historical accounts are going to play into that. It would be interesting to then see if they kind of prove true, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes?
I'm interested in the whole concept of stress itself, and so that sort of led me to, I know that you did an age estimation. What were the ages of your, individuals like? Were they older, or did you have a lot of young people, or what age estimation? How was that?
Yeah. I did not bring specific data on that, so if necessary, I will correct myself in future presentations. What I have noticed, and you also have seen, I have a lot more females, and actually they tended to be older females. I specifically worked with only adults, but just from my memory of the experience, I tended to find females older than 50. Quite a lot. I was a little bit surprised by it. I think males usually ranged in the middle adult, so 35 to 50 years old. Yeah. Yes.
Sort of an interesting unintended connection, I think, between the two presentations, both looking in a way at food security and malnutrition. But I want to also allow people to ask questions of Alisha. I think we have some extra time, so I know there were some questions we didn't get to, but consider this an open forum where you can ask of either presenter.
Is this okay if I close it now? Oh.
Anna, first of all, thank you for the pictures of the cats. As the owner of the new cat in Banksy, it was very good to see the cat pictures. I was wondering, when you were looking at the skulls, did you see any evidence of trauma or violence?
A couple. Usually healed, so that's a positive.
That's
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yes.
Kind of a related question. What was your disease prevalence? How many individuals did you have at the end, like 88, 89?
Sorry, could you?
How many individuals did you record, and what was your disease prevalence? So how many individuals actually had pathological lesions?
Yeah. So the parodic hyperostosis tended to be the most. I guess anemia wasn't probably super prevalent in the population, although I do put an asterisk. Again, I will check myself. But yeah, linear enamel hyperplasia, so stress during autotomy is what was most prevalent in the Samantash population that I looked at right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's
Okay. Yes.
Maybe in your question, I don't really know how to ask, like what to pose it as, but I'm just thinking about the AAAs and the recent panel that was transferred, was removed. You talk about like sex estimation and like what that process entails, or not necessarily entails, but the use of it in your research, the discourse around sex estimation as opposed to other means of determining sex.
Yeah, but that's a great question. I think it is something that all osteologists should be aware of, right? And I am also, I'm not trying to estimate the gender of the individuals, because that is, at this stage, is completely not accessible to me, right? Maybe if one is looking at a complete burial and can analyze, there's like a lot of burial goods, maybe then you can kind of get something from also the cultural context. This is not the case for me. I just see only the bones. And osteologists so far have done a great job, looking at these traits and making sure that we do know the sexual dimorphism basically between individuals, and specifically for the pelvis, there is a biological reason for why they are distinct. To also kind of in those cases where features are in between, right? That might indicate, okay, maybe this individual was not completely female, completely male, right? Whatever that might mean for their gender, and so on. Again, those individuals did not make it into the sample. All I do is assign the specific sexes. Yes.
Thanks, for the presentation. I wanted to ask you kind of a relevant literature question, something like, what kind of intervention, what are the kind of findings around some of the sites where some of the similar research has been done, and where do you sort of project your research kind of coming in terms of the scholarly conversation around, I guess, like the urban rural, and just kind of like a bigger framework for me,
Yeah. Well, one point of the conversation is the effects of urbanization, or I guess ruralization in Byzantine time as well, on the health and stress of the individuals, to also inform how those processes can affect the human skeleton in the modern times. As I have also read in contemporary Turkish studies on urbanization, Turkey is experiencing this movement of people to urban centers. There's a lot of urbanization for profit, what they're saying, and kind of like placing people in big apartment buildings where everybody's crammed together, right? So potentially, hopefully, I can get also insight on how that can affect, again, the people's skeletal health, right? And hopefully have the recommendations for maybe policy adjustment. And the second conversation is the embodiment of the experiences, again, on the skeleton. How the lived experiences of the individuals basically get embodied into their bodies.
But is there other research in this area, like in that part of Turkey, that have there been other excavations and research done about these same kinds of?
Specifically in the ancient times, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. About the one that specifically also adds Byzantine time period, one article. Two more that focus on Hellenistic and Roman periods. So
there's a lot of room for your
I think so.
Yes. That's cool.
Yeah.
Question for Alisha. Thank you both, of course, for your presentation. But speaking of embodiment, you alluded to the fact that in some of these pantries, the quality is not good, and you yourself have literally embodied now the effects of malnourishment and other factors. So do you see an effort in the pantries in your community to try to ameliorate that aspect of the situation?
The food quality?
Yeah.
Actually, no. I see the opposite. So what happened is after COVID, food pantries became much